Well, hello everybody and welcome to my channel. I'm Louise Savage of Louise Savage Muses, and I have with me in my library my lovely son Simon.
I wasn't invited, I just turned up.
He
Climbed in through the window.
He was kind of invited. Anyway, we thought, yesterday we went to Bridgnorth, didn't we? And we had a good old rummage around the charity shops, and I found, no I didn't, I'm fibbing, Simon found this on one of the charity shop shelves and very kindly bought it for me. Well, he didn't kindly buy it for me.
Let's tell the truth about that story, please, Louise.
It's called Miss Savage Moves Her House, and I'm Miss Savage. I've always been Miss Savage from birth to now. I've never changed my name. So this is very intriguing for me. And Simon spotted it and said, I said, oh, I'll get that. And then Chris and I left the shop.
And not just that, there was another book that Mum wanted me to hold.
There was a lovely gardening book, and Chris and I left the shop, and we walked down the high street and turned round, and we were wondering where Simon was. And then I got the giggles because I realised that he was stranded in the bookshop with the books that
just holding the books in the charity shop.
So anyway, he very kindly bought them for me.
Billy no mates, I felt like.
He did spend an entire £1.30.
I think you'll find it came to £2.60 actually. In fact, no, actually the other ones are hardbacks. I think it may even be £3.60.
He's not bitter.
Not
anyway, so we were. Oh, sorry, I'm wriggly today.
Oh.
So we were looking at this book and speculating about non-fiction November.
Also, we should say that because of our surname,
yes,
she is definitely related to us.
We must be related. Yeah, that's anybody who has Savage spelt this eccentric way, like this, is a relation.
You say eccentric, I say extra.
Extra. We had a relative about 150 years ago who couldn't spell. Before that, if you take our family tree back, not that you're necessarily remotely interested in this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Our name was spelt Savage, as it should be, and then about 150 years ago.
I don't believe as it should be, because the way we've got is our way, and that's lovely, and as it should be. I do. I love my surname.
Yeah, I do.
Even though it really annoys people, and it annoys me. Sorry, when I have to respell it for people, I still love it
all the time. So we've grown to love it. Some relative about 150 years ago spelt it this way, and originally it was a Nottinghamshire name, and then it spread. I think there are quite a few Savages in America and Australia, but as a clan we're not very big. I've only met one, and we worked out we were definitely related. So anyway, that's a
I don't think I've ever met another Savage. Anyway, This is not what this video is about.
This is not what this. So it all started with this book and non-fiction November coming, and I realised that throughout my reading career, i.e. my life, since I was about 4, I've read very little non-fiction. Like if I look at my fiction shelves, they take up an entire wall, whereas my non-fiction takes up 3 very small shelves. And actually a lot of those non-fiction books are books that Tim's read, not me.
Oh.
So I just feel like I'm a real innocent in this area. And also we are very excited because the Women's Prize are inaugurating their Women's Prize for non-fiction shortly, and I think that's fantastic, but I really don't know where to start. So I thought, well, how do I solve this problem? Well,
the thing is, because this had come up before even buying that book, hadn't it? Because you said, could you bring some books with you? So I have a selection of, I didn't do 5, I did 6. Because at first I was looking and I thought, 5's going to be really difficult in terms of I might not have that many, because I was thinking, I don't think I read that much non-fiction. But then actually when I got to the shelves, I was like, oh, there's a lot of authors. And actually I had to discount loads. So I discounted Natalie Haynes, because I know you read some of her fiction, so you'd be aware of her. I discounted Maggie O'Farrell. There are various authors where I was like, oh, I feel like I might have headed to those.
Yeah.
So I went for some rogue ones. And first of all, I went for Yrsa Daley-Ward's The Terrible, which is also an amazing cover. I love that cover so much.
I've not even seen that book.
I have wanged on about this book before, awkward,
sorry.
my channel, and I was worried that, because also what I didn't want to do is recommend lots of books that I've recommended on my channel before, and I have recommended this one quite a lot. I will also be doing recommendations of books that I've read in 2023 that are non-fiction. I didn't include any 2023 releases either.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, so this book is, I love this book on so many different levels. This is Yrsa writing about her life from childhood to a couple of years ago, and she writes about all of her life, including the terrible, and her life often was quite terrible, but she looks at celebrating that. So it's how she grew up as a young black woman in the north of England, what that was like for her, what it was like to then be questioning her sexuality. She then went on to become a sex worker, and she looks at all of these roots, and now she's like this incredibly like amazing poet, and it sort of looks at how the terrible things made her who she is.
Right.
So it's kind of the opposite of those, you know, those memoirs where people have been through all the time, where it's like a hand on a rainy window and it's like my dreadful life. This is like the terrible, but oh look how amazing it is and how to celebrate it. So this is a corker.
That sounds amazing.
Also Northern England dialect a bit, so that's quite
I'll
lovely
enjoy
too.
that. Yeah.
And also it's quite vignette-y, which I love. So nothing's too long, so you end up whizzing through it.
That sounds really cool.
And she's just released a new book earlier this year, which is I think called How It Works, and it's using what she's learned in her life, and you go along with her and do exercises as it goes. So it's a book that you're learning about yourself and her from at the same time.
Oh, that sounds really
so there
cool.
we are, there's that one.
Brilliant.
Then second up, this one is sort of technically my sixth choice, because some people say it's poetry. I don't know if I agree, because this is Citizen, an American lyric by Claudia Rankine. And she's one of my favourite non-fiction authors. I've got an absolute chunkster of hers that I'm like saving for non-fiction November. I'm into it for ages. But it's multimedia. So like you've got photos in here. You've also got, again, it's very vignette. It's almost like, what's they call it when poetry's in the blocks like that?
I don't know what you mean.
I don't know what the term is. Well, because it's almost like
well, it's free verse, you mean?
Yeah, but it's in blocks. It's not like free flow. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not very good with those. But what she does is with this book, she questions the word citizen and what it is to be a citizen when we are all citizens, and yet some people are not treated as citizens. In particular, black people is what she's talking about, and how they're often dealt as lesser citizens. There's one of the best sort of poetic essays on Serena Williams in here, and it talks about how she was perceived as a tennis player and sometimes being quite aggressive, and that's really fascinating. There's some really interesting stuff here on football, which I didn't think that I would like, but also it's also really powerful, really moving, and then you have like segments like that where I won't give anything away, but that's a really hard part of the book to read.
Oh, okay.
So
that's brilliant, because I haven't, don't fall off your chair, but I've never read any Claudia Rankine.
She's
ever.
Not that well known here. I don't think she should.
Well, I've
be.
heard about her a lot, so that would be an amazing one to read, because she's kind of on my list of get-to authors.
Well, she's just in a very small collection this year, but then there is this other one. There's another one that's about this size, and then there's this massive chunk that I said that I'm very excited for. So you'll have to look out for these in the second-hand bookshops.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we have another memoir that's written in a very different way.
It's all orange.
Well,
It's all gone orange.
Yeah, it's all gone very. In fact, there is
In
a
fact,
bit of
they
a.
are all orange.
Oh, that one's less orange. It's more orange on the side
Well, it's
and
the
the
back. I've been looking at the back, you see.
And orange is a colour that I know that you are a fan of.
I love orange.
So I'm worried that I'm just wanging on at you about these books.
No, it's really
almost like me
good.
doing a YouTube live with my mother.
It is. But I did ask you to do this because I needed it. I felt I needed it.
So Carmen Machado, I think she's an incredible writer. I don't know if you've read her short story collection,
No.
Her Body and Other Parties.
No, I have got it. I haven't read it yet.
Oh, she's amazing. And again, this shows what I like in terms of fiction. They're quite vignette-y, sort of snippets. But what she does here is, this is her writing about an abusive relationship that she was in with another woman. And what she does is each chapter is a different genre of...
Oh.
Well, it can't even be fiction because it's true. So you have Dream House's inciting incident, Dream House's picturesque, Dream House's not a metaphor, Dream House as a prologue. And as you go through Dream House's second chances, there's all these different genres that she writes in about her own life. And it's almost like she's dealing with trauma by this slight distancing. So it's just amazing. Yeah, one of my favourite authors.
I'm sold.
Books. This could be an expensive exercise.
This could be a very expensive exercise.
Oh God, there's another orange book.
Oh my lord!
They're not orange after this. This is My Mess is a Bit of a Life, Adventures in Anxiety by Georgia Pritchett. Now, I'm sure I've banged on about you this before.
I think I started listening to this on Audible.
Maybe.
But I don't know why I didn't get very far with it. It was probably because I've moved on to something else. Like, I don't know, but I think I did.
So Georgia Pritchett has become particularly well known because she's one of the writers on Succession.
Oh, okay.
But
I didn't know that.
her career started writing jokes for people like Ronnie Corbett.
Oh.
And she used to meet him in a lay-by and give him jokes, and he'd drive off in his Mercedes and be like, cheers, love, thanks. She's
really
also
funny.
written one of the best movies of all time, Spice World. She's got a really very career. But this book was totally not what I was expecting. And I think I read it on a random... someone at Faber was like, you would really get the sense of humour. Well, I laughed so much in this that I was annoying Chris. Because he's like, why are you like, you just sat laughing. And you know, when sometimes someone sat laughing, you feel excluded from it. And he's like, but honestly, again, very vignette-y, but what she does is, you can see like sometimes a chapter will be just that amount of, and I wonder if that's something that I like in non-fiction, because I always worry with non-fiction it's going to be academic and I'm not going to get through it. That's an epiphany that I've just had. But what she does is she starts writing from before she's born, which is also hilarious, and like her parents' awkward coupling, and then she moves on to how she was a very awkward child, and you're laughing and like joining in. But then she also, it's really poignant, like how she was treated as a woman in the sort of 80s and 90s in a comedic setting was really bad. Like she would have all the big
when
gags.
She became a comedian?
No, this was when she was writing for others.
She was, right, okay.
So in the writing room, she was almost invisible
Just
as a woman.
overlooked.
Yet she had some of the best gags. So it looks at that, but it also looks at her coming to terms with her life, and both in terms of her sexuality. She also has difficulties having children, and then has autistic children, and then she finds out she may be autistic. So it's just a real adventure. But she's so good, obviously at writing comedy, but at being self-deprecating, but not in a way that's annoying. Because I think there's a very fine line when someone's too self-deprecating, like, come on, you just want, sympathy. That isn't this. This is like, this is where I'm a bit daft. Come and join me along. And it looks at anxiety in a really different way.
Oh, that's cool.
I also quite like the carton on there. It's like a school dinners thing.
Yes.
So there's that one. I feel like I'm talking a lot.
I'm loving these. No, talk away, because it's brilliant.
Then we have, now this book I would never have picked if it wasn't for my friend Melanie. When we did book club together, this was a pick that Melanie picked. I said picked a lot there. Picked a pickled pepper.
Peter Piper.
And this is I Am an Island by Tamsin Calidas. And this is about Tamsin, as her and her husband have a really horrific robbery in their house when they're there in London. So they decide to leave. So they decide to move to a Scottish island because they think it'll be peaceful, it'll be quiet. They take on a farm. They are not welcomed particularly, is how I would put it. This is very much about incomers and those who've already lived there.
They call them blow-ins here.
Yes, and this is very much about that. But also what happens is they get there, their relationship changes because he just becomes a very difficult character and there's nowhere to run. But she's also determined that she won't run. Some of the writing about the brutality of nature is stunning in here. But also, this is just a book about someone who's so resilient, who isn't quite aware how resilient they are, even though as you're reading, you're like, I couldn't live through any of that. But it's also one of those things where if somebody told you this was their story, you'd go, that's fiction.
Right.
But it's not. And the way that I really want to go to
You're
the Scottish Islands.
You're trying not to go spoiler here, aren't you? I can see.
I really want to go to the Scottish Islands, but this mildly put me off.
Oh.
I don't think the tourist board would be full of them. But honestly, it's the writing in this one as well. It is just honestly one of the...
And that's not remotely fragmentary, is it?
No, this isn't fragmentary. There are pictures.
Oh.
Because you get the occasional... I mean, that kind of gives you an example. That's called Act 2, where we've got stormy waves happening. Okay. And honestly, just as you read on, I remember thinking like, oh, I'm going to really enjoy this. Thanks for picking it, Melanie. But then I was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't... I mean, even look at that. That's when she goes out in her boots rock pooling. So there's lots of lovely moments like that as well, like even just like enjoying the nature of sheep and how different sheep can be amongst her going through some horrible stuff. Ooh. So that's great. And then last but not least, it has got orange on it.
No way!
Now I feel like you might have read this one.
I have read that one and I loved it. I really loved it.
This is amazing. If you haven't read it, The Trauma Cleaner by Sarah Krasnostein is about... She meets this woman called Sandra, who is a trauma cleaner, and so goes and cleans up after like murders and hoarders and all sorts of different. But not only do we get to know Sandra and her life as a trans woman in Australia, which was very difficult. You'd assume it wasn't, because I always think Australia's really accepting, but as we've seen in the news, it's very much not.
At all. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think it's because it's always been seen as like a bit of a gay mecca.
Okay.
So maybe that's just Sydney, not the whole of Australia. Anyway, but also Kylie. But anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but also you get to know the stories of the characters that Sandra cleans up
Yes,
for.
you do.
And I thought it was so brilliantly done. She has another non-fiction book called The Believer, which is all about religion.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you've read that
maybe
one, then
that's
there's
one I
another
need to turn to then.
recommendation.
Yeah.
There you go. One Woman's Extraordinary Life in Death, Decay and Disaster, but I think it is much more than that. It is about all the people
I
around
couldn't put that down when I read it. You know, I just wanted to sit and my eyes were getting wider and wider as I was reading it. Just the whole concept of a trauma cleaner, who knew that was a job? But of course it has to be, doesn't it?
And also I think it's just, I just think it's brilliant, and I think it's one that I would like to reread again at some point. But also this, to me, I guess actually with all of the ones that I've mentioned, this is the power of non-fiction. I think non-fiction can sometimes be seen as being a bit dry, a bit academic. There's probably lots of footnotes. And actually, these are just all these incredible stories.
I think it's really interesting you say that, because, of course, my relationship with non-fiction, I mean, I say I haven't got much non-fiction, but actually there's a whole wall of classics books. You know, so I've read an awful lot of academic writing about classical literature, and actually, again, going back to the male-female thing, the vast majority of those books are written by men.
Yeah.
There are very, very few. I mean, Edith Hall, Rosie Wiles, Natalie Haynes, Mary Beard, but I could reel off dozens and dozens of male literary criticism and things that I've read. So yeah, I think this. I'm really excited to see what happens with the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction. Just going back to
and also
where we started, because go on. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, I noticed with my shelves, with my non-fiction, I was shocked how much I had. Then I was shocked by how many women I had on it, but it's still predominantly men. I won't lie. But what I wasn't happy with was when I was going through my non-fiction by women, there weren't that many books by women of colour, and that's something I really want to address with my reading. But also, I don't know if there are that many out there. Like, that's the other thing, and I think that's what the non-fiction prize is hoping to do, is to want more male non-fiction writers are published than women non-fiction writers, but also I think there is a disparity throughout all non-fiction in terms of white authors versus authors of colour.
I agree with that. And one of the things you said to me when I asked you if you'd bring these books, because you thought you'd go to your shelves and you'd find lots of memoirs by sort of famous pop idols and that kind of thing.
Not
rather
from
than...
Pop Idol, just to say, generally Spice Girls.
I meant pop idols in the original sense of the word, before the TV programme came along. So Simon, thank you so much. It's really lovely to have you in my library. And we are off to Ironbridge, aren't we?
We are.
Shortly, to go to a second-hand bookshop there that we haven't visited together before. So, in fact, neither of us have been there before, I don't think.
I've been to Ironbridge with you, but I haven't been to the bookshop.
So we're really looking forward to that, and I'm sure I'll get my words out in a minute. It's that bacon sandwich, it's gone to my head. We will report back at some point, I'm sure, on our...
Can I ask a question, though? Could you all please, in the comments below, let us know of lots of other non-fiction books by women? I would particularly be also interested in non-fiction books by women of colour, like the one that... There's an amazing non-fiction book. Have you read the, is it The Secret Life or The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks?
No, I haven't.
You have to read that, by Rebecca Skloot. Now, that's the story of a black woman who was in a very poor part of America, and they took some of her DNA for some reason, and her DNA is now like in space. It's helped helped create all these drugs, and she died pretty much penniless, and they ignored her for it. It's amazing. But it's written by a white woman, which is fine. But like, I also think we do need some own voices memoirs. But I think at the time in publishing, because there's been a bit of a discussion about that book recently, in the time in publishing, like, I think we sometimes forget about allies. And I think we need to remember, because I know Rose Tremaine had this with the book that she wrote about a trans woman, but people are forgetting that publishing has only changed very quickly, very recently.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can discount people for
You
writing about
can't.
other
You know, we
experiences.
have a history.
Yeah.
You know, things move and change, and we have to acknowledge that.
Anyway, sorry, that went on a very different tangent than I was expecting. But basically, what I'd really like is lots of your recommendations in the comments below on Mum's
And I
video.
would too. Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much for coming along. And
Pleasure.
we will go off and tootle off to Ironbridge now. Take care, everybody.
Bye.